So the next series we're going to do is our hip opening series. We're going to focus on 3 big exercises, and they're all very relevant to BJJ. And the focus is to open up our hip joint at the front, at the side, and at the back in order to maximize our hip mobility. So stay tuned and check this next video. Okay, so first exercise of the hip mobility series is our couch stretch, or our hip flexor stretch. Now, probably the most butchered hip flexor exercise ever. So what we're going to do is start in this lunge position, and what we typically see is people dump their spine into this massive extension posture, their guts are hanging out, it's just not a good look. So what we need to do is get our position from our hip and go into something called a posterior tilt, which is essentially getting your nuts towards your belly button and rolling that position up. What that does is it gets our glute working and extends our hip, which really stretches out the front of this here, rather than sitting here and doing nothing except exacerbating the length in the lower back, which is essentially what you don't want. So position A, I get here, I stack my hip joint over my knee. From there, I'm squeezing this glute as hard as I can. If I'm doing that right, I should get some tension here at the front of this leg, which is basically me stretching out my hip flexor and my rec fem, the muscle that crosses the knee and the hip joint. From here, what I can do is then pick my knee up and hover, continuing to squeeze that glute, and then come back down. I relax my position, I go back into my position, I'm continuing my tension here, I lift, I come back down, and then what that does is it lengthens out the muscle in the front. If I'm already quite flexible, then what I can do is grab this back leg, squeeze my hips under as much as I can tolerate, and then that makes my quad stretch out even more. I relax my foot, and I can come back to that position again, tucking my hips under. And if I want to maximize that even more, I'll just put this foot up on a bench or a couch behind me and do the same thing over and over again, 10 reps, 12 reps, something like that. Next position is we're going for a shin box, so basically 90-90 in the hip. And what we're going to focus on is getting internal and external rotation of the hip, so that's kind of sideways postures. What we're going to do is be putting our foot on our thigh and starting off with our hands behind us as kind of an entry-level flexibility position. So I'm going to be here, I'm going to bring my knees to top position and then roll them back away, bring them back up to the top, bring them back away. For those that aren't very flexible, that'll be heaps. For those that are a little bit more flexible, what you do is put your hands together, clamp them together so you're kind of bracing or lightly bracing your core, and then you're going to roll, come back down, roll, come back down. And again, in isolation it doesn't do a whole bunch, but as a series it really starts to open up that hip, particularly around the front and side. So again, 90-90 or shin box angle again. So we've got our entry level or starting exercise, hands behind us. I'm going to bring my knees up and then back down to the side, bring my knees up, back down to the side, or as a progression from there, hands are together, lightly bracing my core, bring myself up, bring myself back down, and going through these positions, trying your absolute hardest not to dump at the spine while you do it. So last exercise of the hip opening series is my pigeon stretch, and that's really good for stretching out my glutes. So what we're going to do for our setup is we're going to get this knee in front of our hip, and then depending on the flexibility and your knees themselves, so for some of the older guys who have some knee stuff, be careful of loading this position too hard. But then again, if you're in your home, give it a crack. Disclaimer on that. So what we're going to do is bring this foot up, bring this knee up, looking for somewhat of a diagonal position in the shin. Now from here, what I'm going to do is focus on getting my left hip or my front hip back towards the ground. And now I do that by pushing my back heel, back knee, as far away as I can. To then progress the stretch, if I've got my left leg up, I'm getting my right hand to Spider-Man reach around, maintaining my left glute pushing towards the ground. I can come up and I can make this a bit more of a dynamic or PNF stretch where I'm going in, coming out, going in, coming out. So from side position, I'm bringing my front leg up, I'm somewhat diagonal in the shin, I'm pushing my back foot, back knee away from me so I can sit closer to the ground, and then from there I'm reaching around like a spider, coming back, reaching around like a spider, coming back.
going through that.
So that's our hip opening series. It's one of those ones where you may not feel tight all the time, but you might have a low back that's a bit cranky, your spine that's a bit cranky, your knees that are a bit cranky. And oftentimes we look at the big guys. So that's our ankles, that's our hips, and that's our spine. So hips are a really good place to start due to all the time we spend there squatting, deadlifting, lifting, BJJ, running, whatever it may be. So start with the hips, open everything up. Usually things will start to feel a bit better, and then you can work up and downstream to the ankle or to the spine accordingly after you've addressed usually the main problem.